We should all be having more meaningful conversations. Dr. Nick joins us more with why. Okay, that doesn't sound like a gee whizzer, but what I really found fascinating about this is introverts have no longer what the rest of us haven't gotten.
Right.
Which you think introverts wouldn't want to have real meaningful conversations because they're inward and you might be getting too close. I would think an introvert would like, oh, how are you doing? Nice weather today. But the research shows different.
Well, yeah, my experience with introverts is they're not going to do small talk either.
No, they hate small talk. Their brains don't work that way.
They're not going to do much of anything. I have worked with an introvert that is a great example of 6 months later, our conversation started getting meaningful. And I mean meaningful. And it feels like it's this loyalty that we've got to each other forever and ever. But it took a while to get there.
I see.
But that's not, I mean, that's the introvert. But
they also said, like, even at a party.
Yeah.
And if you know someone's an introvert, and you can usually spot it, you can tell. To have a meaningful conversation, you can't say, oh, how are you? Da, da, da.
Sure.
You want to say, what's your story?
What's your story?
Tell me about the town you grew up.
Tell me about the town you grew up.
Why did you
That's
get
into meaning
in your line of work instead of what's your line of work?
Right. Why did you choose this career? Or how many careers have you had? Ha ha ha. Because that too is breaking open the weather. What's the weather like?
Right.
Which is the perfect line sometimes for saying hello, but it just doesn't go into much meaning or purpose.
But research shows that happy people have deeper conversations. Why is that? What's the connection there?
Whitney, every time I try to tell myself that I'm unhappy, I remind myself how fortunate I am to have intimate experiences with people, and I don't mean sexual, I mean intimate in terms of conversations.
Right, and not just your clients.
No, meaningful, interesting. What I think draws us into that and makes us happier is that we're experiencing humanity. We're experiencing experiences, people's stories. We're getting a glimpse into their film. What was your favorite sport? Well, I didn't like basketball. I was a baseball man. And now you're moving into something that begins to get that other person thinking.
Yes.
About, I saw this movie and I just never could get into that. And then before you know it, you start talking about movies. And what kind of movies that you really, are into. It's not necessarily getting overly personal.
That's what I was going to say. Where's that line?
Yeah, there is a line. I mean, I always like to preface it, and I do it with most of the people, and I'm sure you've probably heard me say it. Mm-hmm. Tell me if I'm getting too personal, but I'm just curious about this. Tell me if I've crossed the line. Sometimes it's best for us to set it up so that we don't offend or push people away who are a little bit less prone. But I know that, like, even when our family gets together, and again, we're honest with each other.
You all are a big, loud family.
and we have a great time together, but I have to really push us to get into some kind of a spiritual, meaningful conversation. How are you doing? How is life going? We're not just here to have fun, but what was your year like? Was it hard? What were some of your struggles? Why would a family not want to do that? But there is resistance. Mm-hmm. There is resistance to saying, well, this was a tough year, or I had some struggles. And I don't mean it has to always be negative. It just needs to be meaningful. Or these are the great things that happened to me this year.
Right.
Or these are the things that I'm learning about myself.
I love the question, what are you battling right now?
What are you battling?
Because we all have struggles.
Yeah.
And in a conversation, even if it's someone you don't know very well, there's a lot of insight to glean, and maybe how they're overcoming a struggle can help you.
Yes, and that kind of makes me think of, again, what the best kind of conversations are obviously when we are expressing what we're going through or how we're behaving. Like you said, maybe battles. I was just thinking of another question that would be great. Who is it that I've been unkind to, and why?
You mean ask someone that?
Sure. No, I'm thinking myself.
Oh, internally.
As we're chatting, But if I start asking myself, sometimes I ask myself, who is it that I'm unkind to and why? You know what happens? You probably start thinking about who you've been unkind to.
Oh, right.
Then all of a sudden we've got a focus of, sometimes I'm not so kind. And everybody's suffering.
Yes.
Everybody's suffering, or, why is it that I seem to be more judgmental? I catch myself sometimes, realizing that I got a little of the misogyny in me. I'm aware of it, and that's where I think conversations can be so meaningful. Women have just as much right to get angry or as men.
Certainly. And you're right. When you spot it, then you can redirect, right? Or then you can just work on it, or I don't know. How do you?
Well, but remember, meaningful conversation is just that. It's conversation. It's dialogue. It's not giving closing arguments or pontificating or having the final word, right? It's conversation. So we might walk away from a conversation with more questions than answers. What doesn't that give meaning?
Yes. Oh, I'll tell you something.
That's meaning. Okay.
Yes. So I was talking to someone's father. Now, I know his son, but the father lives like in Missouri. So I met him for the first time at a big event, and his sons were involved in the community, and so I know a lot about him. And I started saying, okay, so tell me what he was like growing up. And did you always think that he would do this? And and there were some pivotal times in his life, as everyone else is like, could you believe when that happened? And when it really got interesting, I said, what's your dream?
What's your dream?
And have you ever gotten there? And he said, I haven't. And he said, here's why: I had 5 children. And I didn't think, I had to be the breadwinner, and I never could follow that dream. And I said, that's really powerful. So let's talk about that fear. Why was that fear so big? I know you had a responsibility. And so then we went back to different things in his life, and it was fascinating. And we left that conversation, and he said, you know what? Maybe it's not too late to have that dream. This is a man who was in his 70s.
Maybe not.
Do you know that 3 months later, I saw him on stage singing?
No.
Yep.
Wow.
So,
wow.
I just think that's interesting.
It is. And the other thing that you might be having been drawn out of him, maybe not, was that maybe he got his dream. He got 5 kids.
Oh, no, he said he was very thankful and had a lovely life.
And then you start reframing. What's the dream? What's the dream? I know, I'm thrilled that he went on stage.
But you're right, yeah.
But it's that, we had, the one other thing about the meaningful conversation that I just realized, when we were at Beauty and the Beast the other night, which was a great
fabulous
show, by the way, you were talking to someone, and I noticed this about me that I have to watch.
Okay, tell me.
You were having a very you're into questions, and I mean, you go right for the jugular. You were talking to this lady and and I came in and kind of interrupted, and you pushed me away. Do you remember? You pushed me away, like, wait a minute, because you were engaged with her, and I pulled back and I said, wow, that's interesting. That we have to be careful of. When the dyad's going, we don't need to be interrupting that dyad one-on-one.
You're right.
It's like don't you think?
Because another person can change the dynamic, change the conversation, and you never get back to what was really fascinating.
And it's not intended to be interruptive, but it's very interruptive. And so I have to pull myself, because remember, I want to be engaged.
Of course.
I want to be in it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do, so we have to be careful, because when there's something, remember?
I do now.
You were really trying to engage because you were fascinated with her child.
Yes.
And how well he was doing, and
what was next, and where we're going,
and how he got there, and who was she. I mean, you were all into it.
And how she really supported this, and the challenges.
So in order to get back to your graces, I went and got you a bottle of wine, and then I was loved again. Not a bottle, but a glass.
You're right. There's just the glass. But I will tell you that I did worry about hurting your feelings when I had to do that.
Well, and that's a good point. That's a good point, and I'm glad you made it. But it really.
But I really needed to
right.
finish that story, and it was
That's
intermission.
right.
Remember?
That's right.
And so I didn't have much time.
That's right.
So I apologize.
But I think the adultness. See, there's where the adultness comes in. It's like I knew it. I knew I was jamming the camera. I knew it, and that's why I pulled back. I didn't get my feelings hurt.
Yeah.
And because I think that's. So the next time it happens, you don't need to worry about guilt. Stay with the conversation.
Yes, thank you.
But when I'm talking to somebody who's hot, don't bother me.
Don't bother. Don't come in and bust in. And that's hard to do, especially when people are having great conversations.
Well, with
we all want to be part of it.
With us. There's another topic we ought to talk about: boundaries of conversation.
Oh, I know, right? But my takeaway, and what I hope a lot of other people's takeaway from this is, don't ask questions that people can give you a one-word answer.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Good.
Fine. Good.
Yeah. Okay. That's our challenge this week. Everybody.
Meaningful.
Have a great week.
You too, Whitney.
Thanks. And you. More Weekends with Whitney after this.